you're going to be listening back to this and be like, Danielle, what are you doing? Nothing.
Thank you for joining the Escape With Me Book Club. Escape with me, Sam Reiner.
And me, Danielle.
Into our most recent read. Come with us as we evade reality and go into detail about a new book. We'll be covering the book from beginning to end, so there will be spoilers. Today we are going to 1920s Shanghai. Published November 17th, 2020, These Violent Delights is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet with a supernatural twist. A madness is sweeping the streets of Shanghai, and it seems like only Juliette Kai and Roma Montagov can figure out what's causing it and how to solve it. There's only one thing standing in their way, the bloody history they share. Can they rekindle their romance and save the day, or will the past weigh them down and cut off their ability to work together? So this is a me pick, and once again, I found this book on Twitter.
Your Twitter picks are being better than my Book Talks picks.
Well, Twitter requires you to actually research it a little. You have to do a little bit more than with Book Talk.
My problem is I just go full force into whatever. They recommend it. I'm like, cool, that's probably great.
Yeah, and you don't even know what the book is about.
I don't even look up the plot summary half the time. They give you that little bit of a, so I was murdered, and now someone has to find my killer. And I'm like, I'm hooked. Let's go.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is why Twitter has served me much better.
Yeah, my picks are terrible.
Age level. So this is a YA, and content warning, graphic violence, blood, death, insects, and body gore. And I'm not kidding. If insects is a thing where you're like, this will ruin my day, stay as far away from this book as possible.
Yeah, it was surprising how much of this was insects.
I did not know that part.
Same.
And so I started reading this book before you did. And I was reading the book and I was like, there is a 70% chance Danielle is going to hate me.
Oh, I do. 100%. We're done. This is it. No more books from Sam. Thank you.
I did not know. Oh, it got me. I'm not a huge insects creep me out person, but there's something like lice, and for the rest of the month, scratching your head and being like, oh no.
Well, and as always, I did the audiobook, and somehow it was so much worse than I think you got. I don't know. It's already hard enough to read it, but you can give them a little bit. But with the audiobook, I didn't know when the plot was going to, so I felt like I had to keep listening to insect things.
I mean, technically you do, because it becomes a huge part of the plot.
No, I mean, I know, but sometimes when you're reading, you skim a little bit, skip a tiny bit.
Or take a break.
Yeah, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, when you're reading a book, you can just put it down in the middle of a sentence. When it's an audiobook, you feel the need to complete stuff. At least I do. So I understand that.
Yeah, I just powered through, but it definitely came out of nowhere. It felt like there were little hints and stuff, but it was just like, nope, now we're just going to talk about bugs for forever.
I know, and most of the book was me trying to figure out, okay, is this mystical or is this sci-fi? I could not figure out, is someone actually turning into a dragon or is there a dragon machine?
Well, and there's so much happening, kind of historical fiction / copying a retelling of Romeo and Juliet. Plus there's also the mystical whatever's happening. There was so much happening in this book, I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, my notes literally start with prologue - dragons? But anyway, Juliet is part of the family business. Just gonna completely go over that. And yeah, we're just gonna be like, hey, Juliet, talk to this random guy at a burlesque club and tell him no. Be a jerk about it while you're at it, why don't you?
I just want to talk about Juliet's character for a minute. I get it. Strong, powerful women. We love a good protagonist. But she was so much of everything. She could change her voice, and then suddenly they thought she was kind of a younger girl and so innocent, and like, of course she's a spy, and I don't know, they would never suspect her. And then she flips on a dime and is this badass killer. I don't know. She had too much going on, and I get it. She was sort of undercover for some of it, and she spoke 100 languages. Would have been more impressive if I knew how big of a difference the distinction really was. It's like, oh, and suddenly I was speaking French or whatever, and then flipped back to a different language, and it's like, wow, I'm so smart. But then she told us that she was so smart because she knew the different languages, and it's like, okay, well, now I'm less impressed with my take on Juliet.
Yeah, I just didn't like her inconsistencies. Okay, if you're gonna make her entitled and childish, fine, but don't also try to sell me that she's this amazing baddie and everyone should think she's an awesome killer. You get one or the other. And I don't think the author did a well enough job of merging them, because there were way too many scenes of, oh, I have to go along with this, I have no choice, and not enough scenes of, oh, I'm just gonna randomly kill this woman with a piano wire around a necklace. That happened once. That was a cool bad A moment. And then everything else was, oh, Paul is just being so annoying and leading me around, but I can't do anything. At the back of my head, I was considered shooting him, but because the party had so many people, I just couldn't do it. So I just went along with whatever they wanted to do, and I was like, no, that's not cool.
She was so helpless for most of it.
While proclaiming she's an awesome assassin and a boss leader.
But every time any of those scenes came up where she really was about to choke this lady or about to do whatever or had her gun out, I don't know, it was just kind of funny. I didn't take her seriously, and I know I should have, because, oh, she's like the daughter of this gang leader, she's the heiress. But they also at the same time kept calling her princess and stuff like that, belittling her. And it's like, okay, are they letting her think she's in charge? Or is she about to be in charge of this? Because her parents definitely did not value her, but some of the gang members seemed to really look up to her, but then also didn't. At least with Roma, you knew what was happening. He was on the out. He used to be in charge, and now he's definitely not, and he's got to earn the favor and underdog. But she was so over the top. I could not with her. The whole thing. Every time she was in a scene, I was like, what are you doing? Juliette, calm down.
To be honest, sometimes it made me think of Callie from Specials. I'm special, and you should pay attention to me because I'm special, but I can't be special right now, otherwise there wouldn't be plot to this book, but I'm special.
It's a very specific helplessness while also being
talking about how good you are, but not actually showing it.
Yeah, it's a lot of tell don't show in this one.
And I felt like all the other narrators were very consistent and had a really good place to add. Okay, here's the other thing. I feel like Juliette's narratives had a lot more of the purple prose paragraphs.
Which usually I love. I hated every time she was talking.
Yeah, it was good in the beginning, but then that was everything until like 60% of the way through the book. Then Juliette's narratives were like, oh, I should probably actually do something and not just wax poetic about Shanghai constantly.
Yeah. I never connected with her, which is fine because you don't have to. But I think part of it also was because it was based on Romeo and Juliet. You take a little bit into that, and I think the author was trying to overcompensate for, well, Juliet does nothing. She's not a part in Romeo and Juliet in the classics. She does nothing. She's mostly there for the plot. He's the one who seeks her out, does all the stuff, and she's like, my daddy said I can't marry you. And so I feel like the author was trying to, I don't know, double down on Juliet being cool, and it did not for me.
I just think it was the inconsistency of, oh, I'm child, and her being completely childish in a lot of scenes versus the author being like, oh, but she's an amazing gang member.
Yeah, she was undercover for some of it, or trying to hide, because she'd gotten Americanized. She'd gone and been a flapper or something, which was accurate for the time period. But then she's back in Shanghai, and they're like, oh, our little American princess, look at you.
Well, that's a great example. Think about her inconsistencies between loving the U.S. and hating the U.S. One chapter she'll be lamenting, like, oh, I miss New York. It's so amazing. It's so wonderful. And then the next one will be like, they were all so racist to me, and I couldn't wait to get back to Shanghai. And it's like, pick a lane. Or at least acknowledge you're being inconsistent, or it's like, oh, I miss the place, but I don't miss the people, or something like that. But it was just whatever was convenient for the time was what Juliette was.
Yeah, her whole character was trash. I love Roma and wish he found a different person to hang out with.
Yeah. Once again, a romance where the guy is significantly better than the girl, and you're like, why?
But they try to make her seem better. They try to make it seem like she is the catch, and she just is not it. She's not the catch.
I don't know. I think it goes back to the target audience is women. And so it's like, oh, you don't have to make the woman good because you have to make the guy good. So they fall in love with the guy and they just think they are automatically the girl. But then I'm over here like, I wouldn't want to be this girl.
But she's not boring. The problem with that trope that you love to point out in all the books I love.
You're welcome.
The guy is so much better as a person. She's not boring. Like, you should be interested in all the cool things she can do, but you're not.
But she's a 19-year-old pouting that her parents want her to wear traditional Chinese clothing.
Yeah, which, I mean, is part of the she got Americanized thing. But her cousin has real life problems, and it's like, I'd have to wear a skirt. Oh, no, shut up.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. Kipo?
I'm not sure. I am too white for this.
Kipo. I see. Okay, Q's are usually Anyway, it's a longer traditional dress with the high collar, and the flapper dress has a short skirt, and I don't think it has the high collar. I don't think she mentioned that. But yeah, she's just throwing a fit about it, and her cousins are like, we could literally be thrown onto the streets at any moment and murdered. Thanks. And then you have Kathleen, who pretty sure, they never come out and say it, but pretty sure is a trans woman, and they were in France, and there were triplets, and then a sister died, and so the dad was like, you can't pretend to be a woman, that rhetoric, but you can totally pretend to be your sister Kathleen, and we'll pretend it was my son that died.
Yeah, they never name the dead name of the boy, because it's triplets, 2 girls and a boy, and then the trans woman, so they all were 3 girls, went by Celia, and then whenever her sister died, she pretended to be Kathleen, and then everybody just accept that. So it's Rosalind knew Kathleen, and so then the triplets become 2. There was this big whole thing. Because I did the audiobook, I was so much more confused, I think, or maybe it's the same level of confused you also were with reading it, but I literally had to stop and Google this, and I was like, hopefully I'm not getting any spoilers, but they only had one comment. Some lady at the market was like, oh yeah, your brother had a scar, some kind of off-putting, like, oh, wasn't there another one kind of thing? They never dead name her, but yeah, just a weird little side comment. Only clue. Now we call you something else. Now I'm Kathleen.
Yeah, they never confirm that. They introduced them as twins, and then you get 80% the way through the book, and they're like, actually, there were triplets. And you're like, wait a second. And that's also when Kathleen starts becoming a narrator, because I guess they were like, you know what, we can't do this on the strength of Juliette.
Yeah, Juliette was not holding it up for us.
So she starts becoming a narrator, and I actually think she's a really good narrator, and now I'm stuck. I don't know if I want Marshall to end up with Ben or with Catherine. I am shipping him with both of them and seeing what happens. I think the author is definitely shipping him with Marshall, but just the chemistry they had at that one meeting, I would not be mad if Kathleen and Mars got together.
I definitely think they're leaning towards Benedict with him, but I'd see it.
Yeah.
There is a chance, but
probably not, only in my head.
Probably not. Yeah. The author had their favorite.
Because Mars, they come out and they're like, oh yeah, he's definitely either gay or bi. They never say which one, but he likes boys. And then Ben, they keep doing stuff like they live together and there's all these moments and you're like, is Ben just in the closet about it and he really likes Mars and doesn't realize that's what he's feeling, but kind of realizes that's what he's feeling? Because one time Roma gives him a look and Ben is like, I don't want to talk about it. So I don't know what's happening with that. We will see.
Because it definitely was Ben and Mars. I don't know. There's too many characters in this book.
There are a lot.
Same is true when I actually read Romeo and Juliet. You don't need all these cousins. You're fine.
There are a lot of people in this book. That is very true. It is a relatively long book, almost 500 pages, which once again, I don't think it deserved all its pages.
Yeah. Well, because I think it was 60 or 70% of the way into the book before they actually team up.
Oh my goodness. Yes, that was so annoying.
You know, because it's Romeo and Juliet based, that Roma and Juliet are going to end up hanging out, being together, whatever.
And it's fine to start off with like, oh, we can't work together because we hate each other. But at some point, them not teaming up became frustrating when it was obvious for the plot of the book. That's where this was going. But then they were like, no, we're still not going to work together. Because Juliet specifically, granted she had a good reason, but at the same time, it's like, honey, it just makes more sense for you to team up with him. You don't need to like him. That was the thing. I feel like she was conflating working with him and being in a relationship with him, which is fair. It's complicated. I think she's 19 or something. Yeah, she's 19. That's easily conflated. But at the same time, it just got really frustrating because it just felt like really stupid reasons would pop up. And because they'd be like, oh, let's work together. And then something would pop up. And then they would be like, no, we can't work together. And then they would work through that and be like, all right, let's work together. And then something else would pop up and they wouldn't work together. And it's just...
Yeah, they cross paths 3 or 4 different times.
And every single time, the first time they cross paths, they don't want to work together. And I thought that was well done. But then the second and the third time, it was just, come on.
Yeah, it was too slow for me. I obviously did not like this book as much as you did, so I'm trying not to be mean about it.
I mean, you do you.
It was so slow. For no reason. They both did little side missions for their family, for their gangs. But what are we accomplishing?
Yeah.
The mystery wasn't
the main focus
until
they teamed up, which was, like you said, 60 she's 70% of the way through the book.
It was very far into the book.
And I'm pretty sure, I'm about to double check, but I'm pretty sure you gave it the score I was going to give it until the ending, the determinator for us.
Yeah, I gave it 3 stars, which honestly was generous.
Yeah.
And you gave it 4.
Yeah, so I was going to give it 3 stars until we got the ending, and then I really liked the ending, and I was like, okay, I'll give you a point. And then I promptly took away another point because of shooting a gun underwater.
Agreed. It's so logic missing, but not even in like a, oh, hey, this is a sci-fi, a fantasy.
Even in fantasy, I'm not letting you get away with shooting a gun underwater. It is not a gun specifically made to shoot underwater. It was a regular gun. It was already waterlogged. She is underwater, shoots it, and it kills somebody in water, and I can't.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, so we can skip a lot of the book to talk about the plot.
No plot for like 70% of the book.
Yeah, I don't count the plot is starting until they team up. Okay, there was a good scene of Juliette going to this newspaper place because a guy who's in the Communist Party is like, hey, I'm suspicious. So she goes there and is sneaking around and whatever, and then she sees Roma there, and Roma's also there to talk to the guy, and they have a little bit of a banter back and forth that I really appreciated because I like enemies to lovers, personally. Other than that...
whole lot of nothing. A fancy dinner, whatever kind of thing happened. And so, of course, he sneaks in and shouldn't be there. That scene was kind of neat.
Oh, yeah, in the very beginning where they're at the burlesque club and he just walks in and is like, hey, I want to talk to you. And she's like, excuse me? What are you doing in our territory? And he's like, hey, this madness thing happened. And Juliette's like, that's dumb. And then someone rips their throat out right in front of her. And suddenly that's not so dumb.
Yeah, because of the madness. Also, I don't know. The villain was also kind of dumb.
I feel like we'll get to that. Let's talk about the families, just to get that out of the way. Because it's like you said, Lord and Lady Kai care about Juliette as a person, but not as an heir. And so it's things like you learn, oh, she wants to be a part of the businesses, but she keeps sleeping in. Girl.
Well, that's also, she's a girl. She's a woman.
Exactly. So you should be getting your butt up and being at those meetings. Why are you asleep right now? And it's not even like, oh, I was so late up investigating. This is before that. It's before all that. And she's just like, oh, I just like sleeping in. Girl, you need to get yourself together.
The fact that it just is, oh, because it's 1926, 27, something like that. The fact that it's like, oh, it's sexist. We don't want her to be the heiress because she's a girl. One of her cousins says something in a meeting pretty early on, and they're like, wow, we should do that. And it's basically what she had just said or hinted at.
No, it was the exact opposite, because Lord Kai was like, hey, this madness thing is happening, we should look into it. And Tyler was like, we should murder all the Montagovs and make them tell us. And everyone at the table's like, yeah. And Juliette's like, they will murder us too. You realize that, right? This is not... They didn't really have movies back then. This is not some super awesome book where, I mean, it is a book. You get the point. This isn't, oh, we can just go in there and take over. If we could have done that, we would have done that by now. But yeah, Tyler would have been a really good antagonist if he wasn't used in the very beginning.
And then never again.
And then in the very end.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to stand up against it. And Juliette's like, let's not. And then in the back of her mind, the entire book, she's like, oh, but he doesn't show up again until he shoots Mars.
Yeah, I definitely forgot about Tyler. I knew it was one of her cousin guys.
I feel like he could have been used to a much better effect. Anyway, so that's the Kai family. And like we mentioned, the cousins, Rosalind and Kathleen, are on the maternal side, so they don't have the protection as if their last name was Kai, which I feel is a really an oversight on their part. But sexism. So Rosalind is a dancer at the club, and she gets mad at Juliette for not letting her do things. And then at the end of the book, Juliette's like, okay, do a thing. And Rosalind's like, I don't want to do a thing. I don't want to. And it's like, Rosalind, you were just having a heart-to-heart, being like, hey, I want to do something. I want to be active. I want to work something. And Juliette's like, okay, do this thing. And Kathleen's like, okay, let's go do this thing. Because Kathleen's been helping her throughout the entire book because she's true ride or die. And Rosalind's just like, nah. I wonder why she doesn't trust you, Rosalind. I feel like she's being set up in the second book that she's going to betray Juliette.
I am just now realizing this is a series.
Yes, there are 2 books. This one, and technically a 0.5, which is like a Christmas special, which I have questions about.
I also now have questions. Christmas special.
I think it's from when they were younger, because it says it's a 0.5, or maybe it's a 1.5. Let me look.
Could be nice, but now that the madness is a part of the story, I am uninterested. good. I'm done.
Okay, no, it is when they're younger because it's a Roma Juliette Christmas special. That is the book. Roma and Juliette being 15 and happy is the beginning. It is a 0.5 book. So it's this one, These Violent Delights, and then Our Violent Ends. And I did notice, and I appreciate, they did set up the poison that makes you seem dead. And that actually came into use in this book, which I was surprised. I thought that was being set up for next book. And then they set up the special dagger.
Yeah. For keeping with canon from the Shakespeare stuff, the author did a good job. I appreciate the little tidbits and the little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Look at us. We're Romeo and Juliet. But the whole rest of it that they added in, I do not care about. The madness stuff. Mystical realism.
I feel like it would be more mystical because there are these bugs and they're not natural, but they're not sure how. So it's not, oh, they were made like this, like sci-fi, because we don't really know how they're made. And so I don't want to say fantasy either, low fantasy or anything like that, because it's just these bugs. And so I kind of just want to say like mystical. I don't know. It's more sci-fi than it is fantasy, but it's not sci-fi because they don't make the bugs. Like it seems to be like some sort of abomination. I don't know. Maybe we'll find it out in the second book because we just learned who the heck makes them, basically. So yeah, it's these bugs and they are programmed to take over your brain and then cause you to kill yourself.
Which if it was man-made and released into the world or targeted, would be a cool villain story. Could be awesome.
Yeah, war, immunize your soldiers and then release them onto the other people. Bio warfare, question mark? Not really.
Yeah, that could be cool. But I feel like that's not what's happening.
So it's a little hard to expect.
So this guy, we'll talk about who it is at the end, I guess. Suspense. But this guy found a gigantic bug thing. Ew. And was like, you know what sounds good? Using this. So somehow the bug can turn its host into this dragon creature?
Yeah, I definitely lost interest the second bug became a part of the storyline. So honestly, I don't know what happened for most of that part.
I wonder if there's some sort of Chinese folklore that I'm not aware of that this comes from, or if she made that up in her mind.
There has to be, because it was such a very specific thing, and I know that they're really big on dragons, and from my limited knowledge of Mulan,
oh gosh,
crickets are a big deal. So
what type of Mulan? Disney Mulan?
That is the only one I have seen, yes.
Ooh, goodness. So from my nothing.
Yeah, so from my 0% factual.
I love it. Anyway, that's what's going on in the background this whole time. They're trying to figure out what the heck happened and what's going on. And there's some really good suspense moments. Like Ben and Marshall are in this alley and the dragon's coming by and they're like, oh crap, the bugs. And that was suspenseful and good. But there's so much death.
Yeah, well, and it's based on the Romeo and Juliet. And so the Marsh is clearly Mercutio. And then I could never figure out who Ben was supposed to be.
Oh, he was the other guy because Romeo had two friends. Let me look up the name. Continue.
Probably something like Benedict or something. But when you kind of know that one of them is going to die or something's going to happen, it does take a little bit off of it because is it happening now? Is it happening later? Are they going to try to actually do a sword fight?
Benvolio,
yeah. Super random.
I don't remember. I remember Mercutio. He dies.
But it's hard for me. I mean, I do a lot of adaptations, and this one just was so off the wall with the mystical whatever happening.
Yeah, nothing I read prepared me for that. It wasn't necessarily bad, but it was surprising.
It just took me out of the book too much. I already wasn't vibing with Juliet, and so it just was like, okay, I guess we're doing this now.
Yeah. So there were some really good moments with the bugs, and then there was just, like I said, there's a lot of death. And there's a lot of, oh, we need to find a live host. And they save Roma's sister. Roma's sister gets infected because Roma isn't telling people, hey, this is how you catch the madness, even though he knows. I feel like that one was on him. And so she gets it, and they were like, okay, we're gonna make her pass out so she doesn't hurt herself. But then later on, Juliet's trying to save her favorite uncle, and Roma's like, nah, let him die.
Yeah, I definitely had checked out by the time this part of the book came up. I'm not gonna lie.
Not a fan.
Well, of course, because it's from the two different point of views, and then eventually other people. But Roma knows something, and then Juliet knows something, and was like, wow, if only you two could have a conversation and I could quit learning little bits of this every 10 pages.
Yeah, after like 3 paragraphs of waxing poetic about another part of Shanghai.
Yeah, it did make me kind of want to visit it, but also in the 1920s.
I would want to visit it. It's a cool place. But I'm reading this book because I want to know about Romeo and Juliet in Shanghai, not necessarily because I want to learn about Shanghai.
Yeah, the rival gang aspect is already so cool. And then during communist times, just this extra layer.
Yeah, right before communism really took off in the country.
Right at the cusp of it. They have this interesting thing added to it. They do a decent bit with it, but then it's madness, it's bugs, and it's like, we don't even care.
Yeah. It's a lot of Juliette is convinced that the communists are involved in the madness, and not really.
Not that, yay, communism or whatever, but if the book is going to have it, if you're going to talk about it, that loaded gun, whatever, metaphor, where it's like, if you have a loaded gun in the beginning of the play, it has to go off by the end, and it's like, communism was the loaded gun that never went off, and I'm kind of upset about it, because they set up so many different things, because Juliette is convinced, like you said, that they're responsible, and then she thinks that the White Flowers are responsible, which is Roma's gang, and they're convinced that it's the Scarlett. No, it's this other random thing that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's a red herring, and it's a really big red herring, and I don't know if it's necessarily satisfying, because if you're going to do that and have it be a different person, why are we focusing so much on the communists? It was a little bit too much of a big red herring, where I would have preferred 3 or 4, or at least 2 different options, where it's like, okay, who could have done it? Because I don't count the Scarlett Gang and the White Flowers, because we already know they didn't do it.
Yeah, but which, if we only had Juliette or only Roma, we wouldn't know that it wasn't the other ones. But because the author does it the whole way through of both of them slowly learning, can you tell I was not a fan of this book?
So much disdain for a 3-star.
I wanted to give it 2, but I felt like I kind of almost had to give it 3 stars.
I've done that, where I'm like, this is written too competently for me to rate it lower than this.
Yeah, it's fine. I probably won't read it again. I mean, maybe years from now, if I literally forget that I read it, and I'm like, oh, I gave it 3 stars? Yeah, I might. I know that question comes up later, but...
Spoilers.
I kind of just want to skip to when they're working together.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I checked out of this book so early on, and then they finally not get together, but get together. And it's so far into the book, and at that point, I already did not care what they did, but then I got renewed interest in it. It was hard. This book was a roller coaster.
I'm glad it pulled you back in. It wasn't suffering. But yeah, I do agree. It happens way too late in the book for my interest. Because it's like, hey, I know you guys need to work together. Please just start working together.
Well, originally, very early on, they'd mentioned that they had used to date, and then it was this big deal, and their families didn't approve, and of course, it didn't work out. When they were about 15, which canonically is Romeo and Juliet when they killed themselves. So, oh, cool twist. I appreciated that when the book first started. And then it just became this, oh my god, my ex is here again, that I did not love as much as it kept happening.
So they finally decide to work together after a lot of side stuff. Roma beating up the other dude, because why not? That's thrown in there. A lot of interludes like, oh, hey, here's Mars and Ben living together and talking about stuff and whatever. But we finally get there. I'm not hating on any of those scenes. It's just there's a lot of those.
It's a lot of forgettable plot, which sucks because I had such high hopes for this book, which I know I've said, but a lot of side quests before the main mission.
Yeah.
I feel like also as soon as the teamwork, the whole plot took over crazy, and suddenly the bugs were everywhere, and then not everybody knew about the bugs.
Constant.
His sister and everybody that they knew just started getting this.
Yeah.
A housekeeper or something at her house, and her parents covered up, whatever.
The parents on both sides do not care a proportionate amount for what is happening.
Yeah. They dismiss it so easily. I get you don't love your kids.
For real.
Fine, I guess. But you don't love anybody a part of your gang. You don't love your entire crew, the people of Shanghai. They're like, no, we'd rather just kill the White Flowers. We'd rather kill the Scarlett Gang. The madness is doing it for you guys.
Yeah, I don't know why that's popped into my brain and been such a thing now. It's just, why were the parents so dismissive of this? People were dying so fast, so much. And I know Roma's dad is specifically like, oh, I don't care about my children. But the Kais should have cared more. They're like, oh, we're family. That's the vibe from them. Because they're literally family.
It's because they're sexist. So they get a pass because they're sexist. And Roma's dad gets a pass
because he hates his children.
Yeah, because his son didn't live up to expectations and dated a girl he he shouldn't have.
Which, that was the whole thing. So Juliet's holding over his head that he gave information, and so her nanny got murdered, which isn't cool. But you come to find out, oh, the plot twist, Roma did it so he could save Juliette. Okay, and then apparently when Juliette was leaving, she made an offhanded comment, and some Scarlett Gang people murdered his mom, and he's not mad about that, but she's gonna be upset about the nanny for freaking forever.
So much of this. And I know that part of it is from the Shakespeare, oh, things got misinterpreted, or I said this and then something else happened.
Misunderstanding.
Yes, the whole thing, that's the whole point of Romeo and Juliet, the war between the houses, and then misunderstanding.
But still,
it's so annoying in this book, okay?
480 pages, a lot of misunderstanding. Goodness. And like you said, all of this could have been solved if they just had a conversation and we could have been done.
Yeah, somehow it's worse because they were exes. I don't know why, because in the beginning I loved it, and then it gets to this point and it's like, no.
It's past the point of it being
petty.
It's so petty. And it's not supposed to be petty because it was like a big thing, but the way she talks about it is very childish and petty, and I can't take it seriously anymore because I'm hitting my head against the wall. Would you please just team up? You don't have to date him.
You can just talk to him like a human.
No, either they are making out or they don't work together. Clearly.
They have a random makeout scene and it's just so awkward also.
While a police raid is going on?
I don't know. Girl, get it together. I'm blaming her. She's ridiculous.
Yeah. Something about her narration with the relationship was so Roma, you could do better.
Yeah.
Why are you into this girl? It's like, oh, I loved her. She was so sweet and kind and wonderful. It's like, she's not that anymore. So
yeah.
What are we doing?
A liar.
It's the worst. So they team up and they're like, okay, let's take down the communists. And they go to this leader guy's house and is like, hey, we want to talk to such and such guy. And then the guy at the door is like, oh, that's me. And they're like, no, it's not. And he's like, fine. Anyway, so she searches the house and she finds all this information about Larkspur, who's apparently this guy who's manufacturing vaccines. And then they're like, okay, cool. We're going to completely drop the monster angle and figure out the vaccines. And I get it, but I really feel like you should have been doing both. Because what if the Larkspur was just a charlatan?
Well, and it was supposed to be this big aha moment. They completely dropped the other thing. As a narrator, I feel like you shouldn't give up.
I just feel like they had the solid lead where she had the schematics for the dragon, whatever, and then she just dropped it. Hey, let's just do this other thing. And so they can focus all of their time on Larkspur. I know this is going to pan out because of the book, but at the same time, in real life, it's like, what if this dude was just a charlatan and happened to be talking with the guy at the newspaper?
Yeah, the mystery part of this book was terrible.
Not great.
I don't read that many, but I have read more because of you, of historical mysteries. I don't know.
Mysteries in general.
Yeah. So this one was so bad. I think I might go change it to a 2-star when we're done.
You've talked and you've changed your mind. You've ruminated and dislike.
I very rarely change it unless I do another reread, but I think I talked myself out of that extra star.
I mean, we can talk about the good things. I mean, we talk about the bad things more. Roma is pretty cool. I like him, and I like Finn, and I like Mars. I think they're really good characters, and I also like Kathleen. I think all of those are great characters. Unfortunately, I don't spend as much time with them as I would like, but they're all good characters. And we're talking about the mystery, which isn't great, but she does a really good job of setting the scenes. I feel like I understand 1920 Shanghai as much as she talks about it. So it's talked about too much, but I do think she does a good job in general setting the scene for that. And she does a really good job of setting up the panic for the madness and making it seem like actual, like we have to do this right now, and making it seem urgent. Some of the monster stuff was actually much better done than the mystery.
Oh yeah. There's a specific scene, and I don't think she was the main character. I don't think she was a character at all, but it's basically a hooker. Like this girl is caught in the wrong territory.
I think that was Rosalind, because it was a dancer from the club, and they're just like, oh yeah, a dancer. And then later on, Rosalind's like, I've seen it. Was that dancer, Rosalind? Because the dancer's just walking along and she happens to see the monster and she gets away, but these other guys that were there did not. And then later on, Rosalind's like, I've seen the monster. And so I'm wondering if that dancer was Rosalind.
Ta-da. Okay. Yeah, that scene was great. That specific scene. Most of the time the monster was in the scene, I did not care because I didn't understand what was quite happening.
The whole time I just wanted to figure out, is it a real dragon or is it a machine? And the schematics made me think it was more sci-fi, but no, it is a dragon. It's not a machine. It is a dragon. He transforms into a dragon.
Okay, then I definitely misunderstood because I definitely thought it was a robot.
Which makes me wonder what those schematics in that random cubicle were about. But any of the terror scenes, I think she does a really good job. She's actually really good at horror. Can I recommend a genre shift?
Yes, please.
I'm down for Romeo and Juliet horror.
Ooh, now I'm going to have to Google and see if any of those exist.
Probably. If not, somebody get on that. That would be really good. So I want to talk more about the mystery, but I'm definitely not going to be able to get you out of that 2-star mindset because I do stand by my 4 stars.
It could just be like 5 minutes of you talking about it. Go ahead.
Yeah. The ending is what revived it for me. So when we get there, but they start investigating the Larkspur and they do all this stuff and they finally found, oh, this is a place where they're vaccinating people, and then they just barge in. Nobody has a problem with them barging in and harassing the nurse giving vaccines.
Yeah, it was a little out of pocket.
But there's blue vials and red vials, and it really bothers me that they only take one. Roma pickpockets, I think, a blue one, and is like, hey, we got this. And I'm like, what's in the red one?
Yeah, it definitely was very Matrixy.
Yeah, because one is a placebo, and I'm guessing that's what the red one was. It was a placebo instead of the vaccine, which was blue, because they only let people in one at a time. And you come to find out they were doing a placebo because they wanted certain people to die. And it's actually much more nefarious than when I first thought. When I first thought it, I was like, oh, cool, placebo effect for everybody. Convince them that there's a vaccine and get all this money. No, there really is a vaccine. And the person behind it is actually picking and choosing who lives and dies. Woo!
Dun, dun, dun.
This is a lot more nefarious than I ever felt like it was.
But it's not even the communists.
It's not. It's this random guy. It's this random merchant's son. He has a crush on Juliette. Spoilers, not spoilers. Okay, that's one thing. I do think the author does a really good job of making that character really annoying so you don't think about him.
Yeah.
Mentally avoiding him. And so when it comes around, it's like, oh, and it is this guy. You're like, oh, crap.
It was him.
I was not expecting it to be that guy.
Not bad, just trying to get with Juliette.
Yeah, it felt like really nice guy-y. Like, oh, I'm such a nice guy and you should hang out with me. And even when it's like, oh, she fainted and he's like, oh, let me go get you water and stuff. He just felt more like an inconvenience, not a mastermind. Because even at one point, she's like, oh, it's your dad doing stuff. No, you were so close. It's been this whole time. Because you come to find out the dad puts all this money in this stupid ingredient and he's like, hey, let me smuggle it in using Scarlett Gang. And Juliette's like really rude. And it's like, no, we don't want it. We already have other stuff going on. That's stupid. And so his son's like, all right, bet. Uses this bug that he found in England, creates a monster with it that spouts out mini bugs that causes people to die. And then he's like, let me use a main ingredient of this vaccine be that one drug my dad wanted to use so he can sell his stuff. And I'm gonna pick and choose who lives so the communists look as guilty as possible. What?
Man, I completely forgot that they were also drug dealers. It's a drug dealing rival gang in Shanghai with communists, and none of that is the plot of this story.
No, it's very weird. And a part of me wants to read the next book just because I have so many questions.
Comment down below if you know anything about these bugs and the dragon and
the next book, because we kind of get left on a cliffhanger. But yeah, that's the whole mystery.
It did way too much of the other things.
Yeah, and you're right. It's a bunch of little scenes that could be forgotten. Like, do you remember that they found a live victim and were like, hey, we have a live victim now? And then they promptly killed her?
Nope, don't remember.
I think that's around this time Juliette pickpockets the poison.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that happened and that led nowhere. And so they were like, okay, so maybe try again with a live victim. And then they solved the mystery and didn't need a live victim anymore.
It's over so quickly. As soon as they decide to be friends and team up, oh, no, we figured it out, guys. life.
The biggest scene I feel like is I want to know more about that one place they went to where 4 British guys were just randomly following them and trying to kill them because there was a bounty. That place sounded really cool.
Not a part of the plot.
Not at all. The bounty's also kind of stupid. I don't know why there is a bounty on them. Doesn't make sense.
I can't even remember who. This book was so forgettable. Every time I see it come up on recommended on Bookclub because it keeps getting added with other books.
Yeah.
No. Why do you guys like this book? I am so confused.
There are a lot of good parts and I cannot articulate them, and I feel like that's probably part of the problem.
Yeah. And it's only been out a couple of years, but it just had such a crazy fan base. I was on a waiting list to get the audiobook for quite a while.
Really?
Because most of the books that I pick, I get maybe 2 weeks and I'm done if I don't immediately can get one because I have 3 libraries I have access to. And I was on a waiting list for this one. Other people want to read it and listen to it.
That's funny because I think I had the physical for weeks and weeks and weeks as I tried to read it.
And I do the audiobook, so usually it's like, I don't know, 2-3 days and then I'm done with the book. But this one, it took me a while and then I had to power through.
Which is saying something for an audiobook.
Something about this was wrong. It was fine. It was a book.
Competently written.
Yeah, no, it was really well written. Didn't make any sense plot-wise for most of it. And I don't know if it's because she was trying to key in, because a lot of the Romeo and Juliet stuff was cute. It was cool. It had some of the dagger stuff. It had the rivals and all of those little friends and stuff. And she had the nurse. So it had a lot of setup. And I don't know if the author just focused too much on that and just was like, oh crap, now I'm 60% of the way into this book and have done nothing except for try to make Juliet seem cool.
Yeah. So the first scene that actually interests me is that sad, but the French ball, the masquerade, right?
That he sneaks into.
And I do really appreciate his gumption for that. He has his crew there and just shows up. He's like, hey, and Juliet's like, I hate you. And he's like, that's cool. So we're going to talk about this mystery.
It was a pretty cute scene, to be fair.
I love him.
I liked that part.
I liked Roma. Okay, Juliette. She is brought to this masquerade because her dad wants to be like, hey, listen to them talking French and make sure they're not talking crap about us. And she's like, okay, I am there for diplomatic relationship. What is the first thing she does?
Immediately zones out and talks to a boy.
No, immediately insults the head French guy.
Oh, that too.
She's like, oh, wait, there's a Korean dude. And I'm like, oh, that could be Marshall. And then she's listening to the conversation. So the second thing she did, technically, she notices there's a Korean. And then she's like, hey, let's listen to the French dudes. And the French people aren't really having sneaky conversations whatsoever. They're being like, the British or something like that. And so she's like, okay, you're not talking about us. Nice. But then immediately is like, you should leave. Fair. First of all, I'm okay with that. That's fair. But your diplomatic relations going into this was, I want to befriend the French.
The problem, well, a lot of problems with her character is she's 18 or 19.
That's so short-sighted. Right there. The dad was like, oh, it's fine. No, I would immediately hand the entire gang to Tyler. You have lost your privileges.
She's done.
Lord Kai just gives her all the chances in the world.
Which doesn't make sense because he's so sexist and loves the cousin, loves Tyler. Why would you keep giving her more chances?
I just wonder if he's saddled with both of them and he doesn't like either of them. He's like, I don't know who else to give this to. So he keeps just hoping Juliette's gonna pan out.
The character, not even development, because I don't think any of them changed. And I know because it's supposed to be the Shakespeare thing, but I didn't see any of them grow up or feel anything different. I mean, they fall sort of in love.
Ben had some character development in that I think he's trying to figure out his feelings for Mars. But yeah, I think the fact that this came out as a duology, we got a lot of the setup in this book, and then the next book would be the payoff.
Yeah, but I don't know if I'm gonna do that one. You're gonna have to read it and let me know, because I don't think I can get invested in a second book.
You don't think I could talk you into doing the second book?
You do talk me into a lot of dumb books I shouldn't read, but I don't know. It's just 2, right? It's not a series. It's not gonna be like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 12.
No, there's only 2, and then the 0.5, which is the Christmas special.
Okay, I'm gonna only read the Christmas special.
So that's the French thing. And then that's when I really want to know what the Larkspur, because Larkspur later is like, oh yeah, I gave some people the placebo based on who I wanted to have murdered. And I really want to know what his criteria was, because a lot of the French and British people died in this scene. And I'm like, okay, the really cruelest part of me, the really base marketer in me, the most cruel possible. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Business options. The British are being like, oh, we couldn't possibly get sick. And so you kill a couple and then they're like, oh crap, we do need to buy the vaccine. And you have an entire new market. But I feel like that's a very big gamble because you could have lost some really important people there. Or was he just like, yeah, I'm totally for the chaos. Let's see what happens. Because he is definitely no respecter of country.
Yeah, because for a second I thought it was just
the communists.
Well, yeah, the communists. But for a while it seemed like it mostly was one of the gangs was dying more than the other. That's why they thought it was intact. And I can't remember if it was his or hers.
Both of them kind of died equally. I will say we got more scenes of the Scarlett Gang dying because I feel like Juliette has more of a family vibe where Roma doesn't care nearly. He's like, I care about Ben and Mars and the rest of you can die. Whereas Juliette has more of a, I care about every single member. So it was more impactful if a Scarlett died versus a White Flower. But I feel like they died about the same.
Okay, well maybe that's what it felt like then. Because I thought it was hers, but I wasn't positive. I was like, one of the sides, everybody was dying, and then they thought it was the communists, and then, oh no, it's equal. But it's not, because it definitely was all one-sided from what I saw. But I guess that's what you were saying, that it was what we saw.
Yeah, what got the quote-unquote screen time was the Scarletts dying.
Is this going to be a movie? Ugh.
I don't know. I think it would make a good movie. I think it would make a better movie than it would a book sometimes, because you can't do all the waxing poetic in a movie.
Inner dialogue of Juliette.
And think about it. The actions themselves were actually very interesting.
Yeah, that one scene, which might have been Rosalind, might have been a random dancer, that scene was really cool.
Yeah, and a lot of the scary monster scenes would have been so good, and I stand by. Horror, Romeo and Juliet, I think would do really well.
Yeah, I think my brain's just too dumb to understand what was happening with the not robot bug.
I still stand by. I don't understand the schematics, unless they were saying that cubicle was Paul's cubicle, or maybe it was Q's cubicle. I don't know whose cubicle that was, and I don't know why they had dragon schematics, but we paid attention to it for so long because we were like, oh, that's proof that the communists are in on it, and then it wasn't the communists at all, and so now I'm just like, what does that mean? And we will never know because both of the heads of the communist newspaper are dead now. I don't know if that will come up again. I hope it does.
Yeah, my problem was there were too many questions still raised, and I know that it's a part 2, so I should be like, wow, I'm really interested to learn about this and figure out the answers, and I'm not. I just don't care. Great with questions. I'm fine. Let's end it. I mean, I honestly probably will do the second one just for that little bit of closure and just so I can tell you, hey, no, this does suck.
I stand by it. I feel like you would have liked it more if this book was 320 pages and not 480.
Because it doesn't start until 60% of the book.
Yeah. I know. I was like, interesting scenes. And then the first one that came to my mind was the French thing because Juliette does not deserve her gang.
So far into the book.
And granted, that's because we already talked about the Tyler moment.
Single moment up in the front.
I was honestly wondering if she was waiting to use all of Tyler for the second book. And then she comes out at the end and she's like, nah, fam, he's back. After that, that's when we get Alicia. I thought she was going to be the live victim. And then Roma was like, no, we don't want her to die. And I was like, wow, Roma, let's kidnap somebody else and make them die, which is what they do. I mentioned that earlier. They kidnap a random lady and they're like, let's do this. And then they screw it up and she dies.
Surprise.
Okay, so we can talk about the scene where Lord Kai and Lord Montagov were going to come together and be like, okay, let's share information. And then their heirs screwed everything up, and then both of them were just like, okay, I guess we won't try again.
Yeah, they're a terrible gang leader.
They're terrible. What? So they're about to have the conversation, and then all of a sudden, I think Mars says something, and then Tyler goes to hit him, but Benedict pulls a gun on him, and then Tyler pulls a gun on him and shoots at Benedict. He doesn't manage it because Kathleen stole the bullets, but Tyler completely ruined this. And Lord Kai's just like, okay, I guess we're never going to talk to ever again. Bye. Throw Tyler out. Why is he like, I know someone in the family is leaking information to the Montagov Montagovs, and I will avenge. I don't know. He didn't do anything. He didn't do crap. He just stood up and was like, I know one of you's up to something. Sits back down. The fearful leader. I hope that comes back up, because that didn't come back up again. We're running out of Scarlett Gang family members, honestly. Who could it actually be that it would be a revelation at this point? It would have been crazy if it had been favorite uncle, but he's dead. It's not Tyler, probably, because he's gonna die next book.
God, it's gonna be one of the girls, Rosalind or Kathleen.
Do you think it's Rosalind?
I think that's why she's so sketch.
But at the same time, oh no, that was Juliette being like, hey, bring guns to a place. And that's when she was like, nope, I'm out. Maybe that is why she's being sketch.
I'm calling it right now.
All right, that would actually have some impact. We are at the only person that could possibly have impact.
If anybody else is like, yeah, you're either clearly a traitor, like if it was the mom, the wife, I could see it.
Also, in the beginning of the meeting, Dimitri gets really fussy and is like, Juliette has suggested this meeting, hinting at that and being upset about it. And Lord Montagov told Roma to go, he had to sneak into the I call it a castle, but he had to sneak into her house and be like, hey, my dad wants to do this thing. And Dimitri's out here being like, this is Juliette's fault. What?
Yeah, I know from Shakespeare it's supposed to be miscommunications and a whole bunch of stuff happening, but I feel like they blame her for so much dumb stuff, but then not for stuff that she actually did.
Yeah. I'm just saying, these gangs are going out after this generation. If this is what they have to look forward to, they gone. There's no way. We probably should at this point, true. But no, we're out. Oh yeah, and I also love how when Alicia starts showing signs, the dad's just like, nope, peace.
Oh yeah.
Flesh and blood, she is 12. He's a horrible father. He should not have children. He clearly didn't need them because he's adopted Dimitri, so what is happening here?
Well, and even Juliette's parents. The parents are so distant. And I get it. The teens are our main characters. They're who we're supposed to root for. But such a disconnect between the characters. They're either fiercely loyal and loving or they're trash people.
For real.
Nobody felt like a real person. They were either perfect and cool girl and underdog boy or...
Well, it's also a lot of death. I don't think I've ever experienced something. And it's a little bit desensitized by the end because you're like, okay, other people are dying. It's lost its effect. It's like, yes, it's bad, not good, but at the same time, it's lost its impact. It's a lot of death.
But they don't care.
No.
Juliette cares a little bit.
Juliette, okay, there's a part where Roma's like, oh, we need to team up because of my sister. And she's like, oh, fine, I'll team up with you because of your sister. And then she's like, wow, he really cares about his sister. I wonder if anyone I love will die from it. And I'm like, you just watched your uncle die. Your favorite uncle? Remember that guy? And she's like, no, I wonder if anyone I love will die.
She didn't love him. He was just the best choice of uncle.
I feel like that is a error in continuity, but it adds into it where I'm like, wow, Juliette. You really care about your people, don't you? Oh, and I love the part when they go to Zhang and they meet the assistant and Juliette's like, oh, my name's such and such and this is something Montague. And Roma's like, that's a stupid name. She's like, it's the only one I could think of. He's like, it's still stupid. I thought that was funny. And then they have 3 separate conversations with Juliette, Roma, and Roma's like, no, we need to work together to figure out this Larkspur thing. It happens on the balcony where he's like, we have to work together for my sister. And she's like, okay. And then after she finds that note from the Larkspur in the communist leaders, she's like, okay, we don't need to work together anymore. He's like, no, we have to keep working together. And then there's another one. I think after the police raid place, it's like, no, we have to work together. And she's like, oh, fine, we'll work together. We finally get them working together. But the author has to keep taking it away. Like, oh, no, but we're still not working together. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm tired. I'm tired for y'all. How is Roma not exhausted?
Yeah, cut the book in half and maybe I'd be down for it.
That's what I'm saying. I think you would like it better if it had 320 pages and not 480. It would cut down a lot of the Juliette introspections about everything because she's the narrator that does that. Roma doesn't do that nearly as much. Kathleen doesn't do it at all. Ben doesn't do it at all. It's just Juliette. Maybe that's another reason you didn't like her.
Well, and she's the main character. Roma does have a decent bit of story, but it's her.
Yeah, it's probably about 60% Juliette 30% Roma, 7% Kathleen, and then 3% Ben.
Yeah, I would have loved more from anyone but Juliette.
See, that's how I felt too. And I was like, I loved Kathleen's parts and I really liked Ben's parts. I want more of this. And then we kept going back to Juliette and I was like, well, dang it. She felt like a quote unquote strong female character, but you accomplish that by making her completely unlikable.
Yeah.
And when she's 60% of the narrative and like you said, doesn't have any character development, it's hard.
It does not change. It's consistent, which is great, but also sucks and she's terrible to start with and terrible to end with.
You could just work together and then be like, okay, I'm gonna kill you later. That was what I thought this was gonna be. And when she started being like, no, I hate you, I thought she was gonna be trying to murder him. And that would have been spicy.
Well, especially because it happened 4 years after they dated. So presumably their relationship ended when they were 15, which is when it happens in the Shakespeare stuff. So technically they could have done whatever they wanted, the author.
You're right. There are only two things this woman thinks about, and it's her feelings about Roma and Shanghai. If you want to throw in a little dark chocolate, because every once in a while she strangles people with a piano wire, that's kind of her in a really quick synopsis. Okay, I kind of want to go back to the Larkspur vaccine, because I have a lot of complaints about this scene, that it did not air the first time. Okay, first of all, you pointed out, Juliette makes this big deal about how when she's not wearing her flapper uniform, I say uniform because she wears it constantly, she wears traditional Chinese clothing, people aren't like, oh, that's Juliette, so she can basically hide and be whoever. So on this top secret mission where they're going to break into Larkspur area and steal vaccines, she decides to wear her flapper outfit. So everybody knows, hey, look, that's Juliette, and hey, look, that's Roma.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me.
They were always like, oh no, what if we get caught? And then went out of their way to make it really obvious that it was Roma and Juliette standing right next to each other. Oh no, we were walking 5 feet apart. Oh my gosh. The fact that you were that close together would still cause gossip.
Well, especially when they would be in different territories. She shouldn't be here. He shouldn't be here. But instead of trying to hide or do any kind of disguises or literally anything, they're like, nah.
Or how they go to highly populated area, like that one bar that's in the really cool place that I would like to learn more about. They're just standing right next to each other talking.
And not even like, oh, with their back to each other in different booths. Nothing.
They are standing right next to each other. Roma's facing the opposite direction of her, but they're right next to each other. And she's in a flapper outfit. They're like, oh, he could pass his Chinese, but at the same time, I feel like, especially at this point, they don't know it, but they have wanted posters everywhere for them.
Yeah, they're not subtle.
Oh, they're so dumb.
But they're good spies. Look at them.
Oh no, Tyler, how did you figure out we were working together?
Because y'all are holding hands. Shut up.
Anyway, so Juliette's like, oh, I need to talk to Paul Dexter and try to get information from him because she thinks the dad did it, not Paul. And so she's seeing Paul as a way to get in.
Yeah, she tries to flirt with him after she's been so rude to him.
But she does a bad job of it.
So bad at it.
She's so rude to him and he's still being passive and nice. And it's like, honey, there are so many people you could have a thing for. Could you please pick one that would at least want to hang out with you? Whatever. I don't even care about y'all's relationship. I want to know if Mars is going to be with Ben or Kathleen. I think it's going to be Ben. I think I'm the only person on the Mars Kathleen train, but I'm just saying they had some really cute chemistry in that one meeting. But yeah, by the end I was like, Ben, could you just tell Mars you're in love with him? Goodness.
Yeah, main character vibes. They didn't get enough story time.
Oh my gosh, I know. Especially now that he was murdered but not murdered. I don't know how I feel about it because I didn't want Mars to die. But now that you take the sting out of, oh my gosh, Marshall is dead, it's not the same.
Yeah.
That stung. Holy crap. He has to get over the fact that Juliette killed his best friend and the love of the life of his cousin, even though the cousin won't admit it. That's a lot. That's drama. That's real. And then she's like, nope, just kidding.
Yeah. Most of them were dead by the end of Shakespeare. So are they going to stay true to that?
Does Tyler die because Juliette actually doesn't like him?
Does this count as a psych out or does that count as Mars dying?
I do like how it was a little bit clever to be like, hey, I used the fake poison that I stole. Okay, at least something came of that this book, and we're not really waiting that long. But But is this going to have a happy ending?
Oh, I don't know.
Because if we're going to save a happy ending for Marshall, does that mean we're going to end with a happy ending? Maybe I went into this book considering it completely wrong. Maybe I should have come in with more rom-com vibes, but I thought it was going to be, we're trying to murder each other, but we fall in love anyway. That type of enemies to lovers. And then it was going to all end. I thought they were going to die. I thought this was going to be way angstier than it turned out to be from the 1920s Shanghai murder gangsters.
And communism. Disappointed.
Yeah.
My hopes were pretty high on this.
Okay, so let's talk about Paul again. I'm going to make fun of Juliette there because she's really bad. She's like, oh, I need to go talk to him. And then she's rude to him the entire time she's there. Could you please try at all? No, she can't. But he takes her to the house, and it's a really nice house because, plot twist, he's the Larkspur. But he's painted 4 paintings of her.
Yeah.
In the span of what? How long is this book? 2 weeks?
About, yeah.
4 paintings. And this is while he's not taking over the world with his micro drone bugs and his vaccination business over here. This guy's just churning them out. And he's like, hey, I've got a surprise for you. Here you go. You should take him back to your house. I'm picking up real sketch vibes.
And you should. I mean, even the first scene he's in.
He's awkward, yeah, but he's not psycho. This is a little bit concerning.
For a character who shares all of her thoughts and feelings, Juliette did not really prepare me for how creepy Paul was.
No, because she just kept being like, oh, he's a pest, he's annoying. And then he shows the painting and she's like, oh, that's weird. Anyway, I need to look in his briefcases. And I'm like, can we lament about this for a second?
No.
I think you should be a little bit more concerned about this guy now.
Inner dialogue about every other decision and thought, not this one.
So she takes the documents out of the briefcase while she's pretending to faint. And that's how we learn about Archibald. And that scene was weird. Romeo and Juliet go to confront him at this random bar, and Archibald's like, let's have a drinking contest. And of course, drinks them under the table because they're 19-year-olds. And he is this huge, gruff veteran of this. And so, not surprisingly, they get drunk off their butt. Romo's is falling over because he is so drunk. And he just gives them the most surface level answers and then is like, okay, cool, I'm gonna dip. And then I was like, oh no, you guys need to get out. Whatever reason, he was like, okay, I'm gonna leave right now because something suspicious happened. And he was like, no, I need to leave right now. And then of course it's a police raid.
Yeah. How did you know, buddy?
Because he's the one who called it. I'm betting it. He wanted them to get caught. Because Archibald wasn't there to answer their questions. All I'm saying. Oh, it was such an obvious trap to me.
Yeah.
You guys are supposed to be really smart gangsters.
Because they're 19 and dumb. They're not good gangsters.
And then they get out of it. And it's really dumb. I kind of hated it. Okay, so it's a brothel and that's why they're raiding it. And so she gets him upstairs. Somehow the police raid is going on, but she manages to get this drunk idiot off the ground and upstairs into a room before the police get to him. Okay. They go up. The police is about to go check the room. Juliette walks to the door and is like, hey, I'm the Scarlet Heir. You didn't see anything. And the police was like, yep, and walked off. You could have at least bribed him.
I definitely would have had more questions for the Scarlet Heiress being in this brothel. But you know what? That would just be my detective work.
Well, the whole point is they're losing purchase in their territory now that the foreigners are here. And so the White Flowers and the Scarlett Gang used to have all of Shanghai, but now they're having a much smaller portion of Shanghai. And so their influence is becoming less and less powerful. And so I thought it would have been cool if he was like, that doesn't work. Because clearly he's doing orders from some foreigners because the foreigners are the one who called him in because Archibald is working for... Anyway, it would have been cool if she had to bribe him. But he was just like, yep, that works. And walked away. Then they made out and had almost adult times while a police raid was going on. I wanted to get into it because finally, but at the same time, I'm like, this is a police raid. I get how it's like, okay, he didn't check the room and kept going, but if you're gonna make that much noise, I feel like another officer is gonna come in. Nope. Whatever. It's fine. And so they're about to have sexy times and then they don't have sexy times. But before that, Romeo and Juliet are talking about it. And so Juliet's like, well, I'm convinced it's it's the communist leader. And Roma was like, no, we shouldn't focus on him. We should focus on Larkspur. But at that point, when Juliette was like, I am convinced it's him, I was like, well, I know it's not him because there is no way Juliette's right. And so that was the point where I was like, okay, so his assistant did it.
Anytime she had an idea, I'm like, what are other ideas in the room? Maybe Tyler was right the whole time, guys.
Oh my gosh, there was a point where I was like, maybe Tyler's right. Maybe we should listen to him. Is that sad? I'm supposed to hate him, but it got to a point where I was like, Juliette's so bad. I understand why the family's being concerned.
Every decision she made, or second guess.
Or even the decisions she decided to make and then immediately didn't even try, but that's beside the point. She went real hard with that piano wire scene, and then all the other scenes of her doing her job, she sucked. All of the heirs suck at their jobs. These criminal organizations will be brought down.
Oh yeah, definitely the parents' fault. But you know what? That's fine.
So we get to the point where it's like, oh my gosh, Paul did it. And this is where it came back for me, because I wasn't going to give it 3 stars. But I liked the ending. It had a lot of tension and drama, and she does action really well. And so maybe that's why I'm a little bit petty, that I'm like, why wasn't there more action? But I liked it. The reveal that it was Paul, which I didn't see coming, because I was convinced it was the assistant, and I thought Larkspur was just going to be a complete waste of time, but I guess I should have realized it was going to come back around if they spent so much time doing it. So it's Paul, and he has this massive bug thing. I don't know. He doesn't know how it works either, and so I have so many questions. But instead of killing someone, it turns the assistant into a monster that breeds other ones and infects the city. I don't know. Anyway, so Paul's the one who did it, and that's how the monster situation works. And I'm glad that Goodreads put it under fantasy and sci-fi, because I still don't know. And so they're convinced it's the communist leader, so they go to their house and they find Paul pretending to be knocked out, essentially. He's just in the water. And every time that happens in a book, I'm like, how long was he waiting there? Do you ever think about that? How long were you there waiting in the water, which is disgusting, just pretending to be knocked out? Or did they start coming up and you were like, well, crap, I need to come up with a plan, immediately flops into the water? He does not tell me that situation, and I have questions.
I did not think that at all.
I always think that, and my brain immediately requires answers to really stupid questions. After it's like, oh, hey, this is what happened, Paul tricks Juliette with a syringe, vaccinates her, and sends the bugs after Roma. I kind of love this. I hate that he's so hung up on Juliette, but as an evil plan, now that I know he's the villain, and I'm like, okay, cool, that makes sense, you're a villain, and really psychotic. Let's just go with it. And so he vaccinates her and is going to try to save her. I don't know what his plan is, to be like, hey, Juliette, you should like me. I don't know. Anyway, so they're both vaccinated and the insects get released. They split up. Roma's going after the monster and Juliette trying to warn people because the monster's out and about and doing bugs. And it doesn't work, so that was kind of lame. I wish Juliette could have been good at something.
She's not. She's terrible at everything.
So she gets to the dock before Roma does, and Roma's about to attack the monsters, but he has no more bullets, and Paul shows up and distracts him so he can't attack the monster before the monster gets there. And so insects go everywhere and Roma gets infected, and so Juliette instead gets the gun and is trying to kill the monster. But first of all, the monster is apparently bulletproof, and I have more questions. How they completely gloss over it, and I'm so mad, because yes, suspension of disbelief, but how is this happening? I have questions. What does this bug do? There is no way anything in the nervous system can suddenly cause you to be bulletproof anyway.
Yeah, I think that's part of why I thought it was a robot still.
No, he's actual dragon, and I have questions. Anyway, maybe it's in the next book, or maybe they're just like, nope, we're never going to talk about this ever again, because that is the sci-fi equivalent to magic. Questions. Anyway, so Paul starts attacking her, though, when the gun doesn't work, and knocks the gun into the river. And at this point, I guess he's completely given up on her liking him, and so he's like, if I can't have you, no one can? I don't know. He's just decided that he needs to murder her. And maybe he's mad, and he's like, well, I don't like you anymore, and so now I'm going to murder you. That feels more accurate, but this is where I took off 1 star. She fires a gun underwater, and I'm so mad about it. Anyway, so she murders him, and she gets up, and she murders the monster, and then then she kills the original large bug. And I put in my notes, Danielle is going to hate me at that part.
This is really gross.
And that's what saved Roma, is because she killed the big one, and so whatever. And I was half expecting Tyler to show up kind of as a second boss battle.
Yeah.
And he does show up as a second boss battle, but at the hospital instead when they go to save the sister, and that's when the whole Mars thing and whatever. But Kathleen can't find something, but she finds something in Paul's briefcase that freaks her out. It's a note that's like, hey, if I die, release them all. And you don't know what them all is. And then screams loose in the city, and Juliette's freaking out because what the heck. And I'm just like, I don't know what that means. We killed the bugs. Are there more bugs?
They probably had more dragon bugs.
They secretly had other hosts or something. I don't know. That's the second book's problem.
Yeah, that's just what I assumed. Oh, cool. Now it's like a plague. Even worse than the one you already had.
So that's where it leaves us.
Cliffhanger.
Do I even need to ask your general thoughts? Your general thoughts are you didn't like it and you talked yourself into a 2-star.
Yeah, I think I've said everything I can about this book.
Same. So let's go on to one question for the author. I'm really curious what part in the writing process she was like, and I'm going to add bugs. Because I feel like this had to be conceptualized as an idea and be like, okay, what if I did Romeo and Juliet in Shanghai in 1920? At some point in the process, that happened. But at some point, she had to add bugs. Did she have a first draft and was going along and was like, you know what, I need more plot? Or did she start with bugs? I have questions.
That's a good question. My question would probably be, so it's not a real question, but it definitely is, did you just go to Shanghai one day and then you're like, let me write this book?
So why Shanghai?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was born in Shanghai.
Okay. You're answering my questions for the author then. I guess I could look any of these things up myself.
I mean, she's actually really interesting as a person because she was born in Shanghai, raised in New Zealand, and then moved to New York at some point, and then graduated from University of Pennsylvania, where she double majored in English and international relations.
Okay.
She's actually really interesting. So I'm not surprised she was like, hey, Shanghai.
That makes sense if that's your hometown. Okay, never mind. Don't have any questions for the author. I had questions for Sam.
For rating, I would give it sitting through a long play out of 10. You start off really good and you're for it, and then you get to a part where you're like, oh my goodness, how long is this taking? And you kind of get pulled out of it. Maybe it's just my ADHD, but whenever I watch something that's like over 2 hours, there's always hits a point where I get pulled it back out and I'm like, how long have I been sitting here? And then you're like, oh my gosh, it is just now intermission? That is what I felt like. There were a lot of good stuff in it, but it was long.
Mine is, I would have rather reread Midnight Sun, which was so terrible, instead.
Okay, I'm not even going to ask you, but I'm going to think about, would I read this again? Maybe? I feel like if I was going to do it again, I would do it through audiobook. I don't think I would physically read it again, but I could see myself audiobooking it in the future.
Yeah, as far as audiobooks go, it didn't suck.
Our wonderful, we never agree on a book. But, have you read this book? If you could do a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, what time period would you choose and what location? Do you have any book recommendations for us? Tell us all about it in the comments below. If you like the video, hit like, and if you're enjoying yourself, hit subscribe for more. Thank you for exploring these violent delights with us. I'm Sam Reiner.
And I'm Danielle.
And we hope to see you and a friend here next time. Escape With Me Book Club is a Lunar Skulk production. Check us out on TikTok or Instagram to keep up to date with us. Lunar_SKULK.